UFC Vegas 9000. Yes, the UFC is back at the Apex. These are the sacrifices we must make if we're going to get two pay-per-views in 1 month. If we're going to get a fight night like the Saudi Arabia card, which is absolutely fire. And last week we had UFC Louisville, another fight night. So we get one Apex card in a month. I can't really complain. Honest to God, this card really isn't terrible, but there's a lot of low-level matchups, man. A lot of low-level fighters, a lot of entry-level fighters, and it's going to be a greasy card, man. The Apex cards are always greasy. We're going to go through, give you every single one of the quick picks, early picks. This is without a lot of film study, okay? These are barely looking at the card. I'm looking at it. Just going to go through it, give you my early thoughts on each and every one of the fights. Main events, obviously, Alex Perez, Tatsuro Taira. Flyweight main event. Alex Perez, second main event of the year. Pretty crazy. But let's go down to the first fight of the night. We got Melky Costa, Nuerdanbieke. Now, Melky Costa got absolutely demolished by Steve Garcia last time, but so did Nuerdanbieke. Okay, both of these guys are victim by Steve Garcia. Like, Steve Garcia is just murking these guys down at 145, but Melky Costa, pretty solid striker on the feet, good submissions on the ground. Not great wrestling. That's what he tried to do against Steve and could not do it. But Shaylin got some power in his hands, but he really likes to go for some takedowns. And in this fight, I don't know that he's going to have a ton of success. And I think that Costa can use his defensive jiu-jitsu on the ground to either force his way back up to the feet. And on the feet, I would probably give Costa an edge. He's longer, uses his kicks really well, and his hands are not bad. So Nuerdanbieke doesn't really do it much for me. I mean, he's got like 50 professional fights, and he just goes out there and he never really looks that good. You know, his one win that I can remember is the win over Derek Minner, whereas Derek Minner threw the fight, completely threw the fight, and that's a win on his record. So I'm going to go with Melky Costa for a quick pick here, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe by submission, maybe by knockout. I could probably see some violence in this spot. I think Melky Costa is a finisher. He's dangerous. He couldn't finish Austin Lingo, which is pretty bad. He put a beating on him. Put a beating on that guy. That guy's not very good. But in this spot, I think he should be able to get a win. It's a favorable matchup for him, I believe. We move on. Josephine Knutsson, Julia Polastri. Now, Josephine Knutsson's still undefeated, but you look at her wins, they're really not that good. You know, she beat Marnik Mann in her UFC debut. Her Contender Series fight was against this chick named Isis Verbeek, who was like a kickboxer. She did some bare knuckle stuff. She won those fights. She won the Marnik Mann fight pretty handedly, like clear 30-27. I think maybe she got a 30-26 on one of the scorecards. Contender Series, she won, but she didn't really dominate the fight. She won 30-27, I think, but it wasn't like, oh my God, this chick is levels above this Isis Verbeek chick. And then Julia Polastri gets a finish on the Contender Series round 2 sub. And if you watch that fight, that's one of the few fights I watched before I made this video. Polastri, she just walks you down. She's just going to throw a ton at you, like pressure. Rarely that you see a women's fighter put that much pressure on a girl. And then on the ground, she got the sub. So I'm kind of thinking Polastri might be able to do some similar stuff to Knutsson. Now, Knutsson's got a lot of kickboxing experience. She's pretty sharp and technical in those areas. And maybe she's able to kind of stop that forward pressure and really put Polastri on her back heels. Maybe. But I'm going to go with the pressure fighter here with Julia Polastri. I think she should be able to walk her down, get Knutsson uncomfortable in spots that she hasn't been in before. And even if she does take her to the ground, Knutsson's got decent offensive wrestling. But I think Polastri's submission game will probably give her some problems on the ground. So I want to go with Julia Polastri, man. Women's MMA. You hate to see it, but we're going to take the underdog here. I think she's a dog, so I'll take her. Saragih, Weston Wilson, the fight that nobody asked for and nobody really wants to see. But here we are. Saragih fighting out of Indonesia. This guy was on the road to the UFC. He fought at 155 against Anshul Jubli, the Indian fighter that the UFC was really hoping was going to pan out. Anshul Jubli beat Saragih to win the road to the UFC and get his ticket into the UFC. Since then, Saragih moves down to 145. He gets his debut against Lucas Alexander, knocks him out as a big underdog. I don't think Jekka Saragih is very good. He just throws hard. He throws really hard leg kicks, throws really hard punches. He's just looking to get you out of there early. On the other side, Weston Wilson, only reason he's in the UFC is because he's friends with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. If you watch this guy fight, he tries to replicate that style. Okay, karate style, and he has a lot of submissions on his record. Mainly, I think, just because guys want to take him down, and then he just beats them because he's got some jiu-jitsu background, and these guys are super low level. Weston Wilson is not good. He can get finished on the feet, he can get finished on the ground, but you have to take into account his UFC fights are Joanderson Brito, who's good, and Gene Silva, who's also really good. So he's 0-2 in the UFC, but he's fought some pretty good competition. I don't know that he could beat Jekka Saragih, but Jekka Saragih is not some lock of the card. I can say that right now. He's not some lock. He will be the pick, because I think he is much more dangerous on the feet, and I don't think Weston Wilson's really going to have great takedown game to get this fight to the ground. I don't think Weston Wilson is very durable on the feet. So I'm going to take Jekka Saragih for the pick, but this is the lowest level that you could ever put in a featherweight matchup. Like, don't have any type of confidence in this fight if you're picking either side, man. I'll take Saragih for the pick, and we're going to move on after that absolute disgusting fight. Carly Judice versus Gabriela Fernandes. Fernandes, I always kind of thought Fernandes was pretty decent. Then she's fighting these wrestlers. She's getting taken down, and she can't get up. So she gets a matchup here against Judice, who's super green in MMA. She has like 4 fights. She fought on the Contender Series against that tall, lengthy-ass chick from like Lithuania or something. Kickboxer. It was a crazy fight. Really good fight on the Contender Series. She lost, but then she still got a contract because Dana thought that fight was just absolutely bonkers. It was a good fight, but she lost. She still got a contract. Very sus there. But Carly Judice, decent athlete, decent stand-up. Like, nothing really stands out. I think she's just a good overall fighter. Like, kind of the new age. She doesn't have a big background in anything, but she does everything pretty well. She could go to the takedowns here to, stifle the stand-up game for Fernandes, because I think Fernandes' striking is going to be a lot more crisp, a lot more powerful in this spot. The few moments we've seen from Fernandes when she's on the feet in the UFC against Jazz Divisius, against Teresa Bleda, she looks sharp. She looks good. And she looks dangerous, actually, for a women's MMA fighter. But if she gets taken down, I don't know that Judice can really hold her there, because Jazz Divisius, good wrestler. Teresa Bleda, really good wrestler. I don't really rate Judice's wrestling and ground game of those two. So I think Gabrielle should be able to keep it on the feet and do her work there. And I think she's probably a little bit better of a striker than Carly Judice. So I'm going to go with Gabrielle Fernandes. Low-level women's MMA right here. I mean, you're getting a girl that's like a couple fights in pro MMA, and then a girl that's 0-2 in the UFC and can't get off of her back. So once again, low-level stuff. You don't want to be looking at one of these sides and saying it's a lock. But for a quick pick, I'm going to give it to Gabriela Fernandes. Josh Quinlan, Adam Fugitt. I don't know. This Fugitt guy has always been weird to me, because he's chinny at times, and then he's super long. He's strong. He's got some decent wrestling, and his stand-up is really awkward, but it's somewhat effective. He's going up against Quinlan, who, after he got popped for using steroids on the Contender Series and in the UFC after he just destroyed Jason Witt, got popped, and then he's on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Trey Waters, not a bad loss, and he lost to Danny Barlow, also not a bad loss. So I think this is a pretty even matchup, man. I think Josh Quinlan's boxing is going to be a lot better than Adam Fugitt, but at the same time, Fugitt's going to have a range, and he likes to stay at kicking range. So it's going to be a matter if Quinlan can close the distance and get into boxing range and do his work there, then I think he's got a great shot. And he's also got a great shot at knocking him out. But if Fugitt can stay to the outside, use his kicks, use a body kick, go up to the head, use the leg kicks, maybe even mix in some wrestling, he's also got a good shot. Now I'm going to go with Quinlan, because I think his losses in the UFC are not bad. And I'm not really ready to write them off. Actually, you know what? I'm going with Fugitt. I'm going with Fugitt for a quick pick. You know, this can always change. Stay tuned throughout the week because I'll give you my official picks after I do a lot more research into tape study, into analytics and statistics. But I'm going to go with Adam Fugitt because I think he trains at a good camp down in Arizona or over in Arizona. And I think the grappling upside is there for him. I don't know. This is a weird one. I'll take Fugitt for an early pick, but it's just really, really not something I'm super high on. You know, Adam Fugitt's not super, doesn't have a big ceiling. You know, neither does Quinlan, but yeah, we'll move on. Jimmy Flick, Nate Maness. I think Nate Maness should definitely win this fight unless he gets into some type of grappling match with Jimmy Flick, because that's all you got with Jimmy Flick. He's got submissions on the feet. He's a sitting duck. Nate Maness, pretty solid striker, and he's powerful, man. I think he should win this fight. He should win this fight by knockout. Jimmy Flick can only beat Malcolm Gordon at this point. Like, Malcolm Gordon was putting it on him until Malcolm Gordon started to gas out, and there's no reason Malcolm Gordon needed to go to the ground with Jimmy Flick. One thing you need to avoid with Jimmy Flick is the ground. Malcolm Gordon just willingly went there, and that did not work out well for him. Nate Maness, hopefully, he's a lot smarter. I think his losses are actually they're not bad at all. You know, he's losing to Umar Nurmagomedov, Tagir Ulanbekov, who is right next to me on the screen. Ulanbekov's a ranked flyweight, and Nate Maness just beat, what's his name, Luan Lacerda or something like that. He beat some guy that was going for leg locks, and he just punched his face in. So I think Nate Maness should win this fight. If Jimmy Flick goes for those submissions again, I mean, Nate Maness has shown, if you try to go for some legs or some weird submissions on him, he's just going to pound your face in. So Nate Maness is the pick, undoubtedly. Tagir Ulanbekov, Joshua Van. They got this as the feature prelim, which is kind of weird to me. Should be on the main card because this is a great fight. Love this fight. And when I look at this fight, I think Tagir needs to wrestle. If he doesn't wrestle, he's in for a big, big letdown of a fight for him, because Joshua Van on the feet, you do not want to mess with this guy. This guy's got forward pressure, insane amount of volume, crisp boxing, and he's just going to walk you down and wear you out. And what he did in his UFC fights is very impressive. Just to be able to walk guys down constantly in his face, throwing combinations, rip into the body, going upstairs, looks really good. He's unranked right now, but I think eventually, there's no doubt, this guy's going to be a ranked contender. Can he do it this week? It's a big test, because Tagir Ulanbekov, no mustache with a beard, out of Dagestan. Okay, the one thing that Joshua Van needs to clear up is some takedown defense. Now, it has looked good in some parts, some aspects, but he has been taken down in, I think, every single one of his UFC fights. So, if Tagir gets him to the ground, he needs to stay safe, because Tagir has a great submission game. He's got those long, skinny limbs that are easy to throw under the neck. And, of course, once you get tired, once you get taken down, and once you get taken down repeatedly, that's when you start to let up those moments where Tagir can mix in a little submission threat, throw the arm under, and look to get him out of there. Ultimately, I'm going to take a flyer on Josh Van, because I think he knows what he's getting into here with Tagir. He knows he needs to stuff the takedowns. He knows he needs to be safe on the ground. And I like this guy, man. I like the way he fights. He's young. He's 22. Maybe it's a little bit too early for him. But for a quick pick, I'm going to take Josh Van, man. Tagir, he's good, but he's not at the level of like the Islams and the Habibs, the guys that train out of Dagestan. He's good. I think he'll always be around the top 10, around the top 15 for sure. But I don't know that he's that next level. I think eventually Josh Van will be that next level. Is it this week? We'll find out. But I'll take him for a quick pick. Moving on. Brady Heistand, Garrett Armfield. I like this matchup. And I like this matchup for Garrett Armfield, because I think Garrett Armfield is one of the most underrated guys in the bantamweight division. The guy's got super crisp boxing. And I know he had a close fight with Brad Katona. But Brad Katona, for his many flaws of not finishing fights, Brad Katona is a tough guy to beat, because He's super durable. He's got insane cardio. He's got insane output. He's got good wrestling. And he's damn near unfinishable. If you get this guy to the ground, you're not submitting him. You're not knocking him out on the feet. He's always going to be there. He's always going to keep pushing a pace. So for Garrett Armfield to get that win, I think is really impressive. And I actually think he's getting a step down here. I think Brady Heistand, I don't think he's that good. Like, he was losing his last fight to, what's his name? Mongolian guy or something like that. Forget his name. He got cut. He's in the Karate Combat. Dana Bakari. Okay, he was losing to Dana Bakari. 2-1 or 2-0. 2-0. He was down 2-0 going into round 3. Dana was winning round 3. And then just completely gassed. Was on the ground. One knee on the ground. He stands still shooting his takedowns. He's just lightly punching his face. Dana just punched my mic. Dana's not doing anything. And then they call the fight with like a minute left? I don't know. I think Brady Heistand's stand-up is not good. I think Armfield's going to be able to touch him up on the feet. And I think Armfield's going to be ready for the takedowns. If Heistand gets him to the ground, he's just not dangerous there. He might get the takedowns. But I don't think he's going to be able to hold him there for long periods of time. And I don't think he's going to be able to do damage there. And he doesn't really have a submission threat. So all signs to me point to Garrett Armfield in this spot. Because I think he's going to be able to do a lot more damage on the feet. And I think if he does get taken down, he's not going to take damage. And I think he'll be able to get back up to his feet. And I think his cardio is good. So I like Garrett Armfield this week. I'll take him for a pick. Asu Almabaev. I think it's Jose Johnson. I think it's Jose. It might be Jose, but I think it's Jose. No, we're going to go Jose. Jose Johnson versus Asu Almabaev. Almabaev out of Kazakhstan. I think he's like 17-2 or something like that. The guy's good. And honestly, Jose Johnson cashed for me big last time against Ann Hellinger. I had him inside the distance. I had his money line, and I had him by sub. And he got that sub with about 12 seconds left. So I'll praise Jose Johnson for that one because he came in big for me. But I don't like this fight for him, man. Jose Johnson, terrible takedown defense. I mean, he's long, super massive for the flyweight division. There's no way he's going to be stuffing takedowns from Almabaev because he's getting taken down 12 times by Ronnie Lawrence, 10 plus times against Jack Cartwright on the Contender Series. Still managed to win that fight because he does some good work on the feet. He's explosive on the feet, long. He's going to step in with that one, come with that right down the pipe. I don't think he's going to be able to have a lot of success on the feet here because Almabaev's just going to be shooting takedowns. He's going to be on him for the entire fight. I'm not saying anything crazy here because I think Almabaev's a pretty big favorite, but I think Almabaev gets the takedowns, wears him out, maybe gets a submission in round 2 or 3, but if he doesn't, he rides out a decision, and Jose Johnson takes the loss, and Almabaev gets his hand raised. So Almabaev is the quick pick. Douglas Silva de Andrade taking on Miles Johnson. I think this is a good matchup, and I was on Miles Johnson in his last fight when a lot of people weren't. A lot of people are super low on Miles Johnson. I think the guy's really good. He just takes breaks in there. He takes breaks in the octagon, and sometimes it works out well for him when he's in the driver's seat. He's in the driver's seat against a guy like Cody Gibson when he's taking him down. He's landing big shots on the feet. Guys are scared to engage with him because if he hits you hard. And I don't know that Douglas Silva de Andrade is going to be faced because this guy, absolute muscle hamster, used to fight at 145. Okay, at 135, he's juiced to the gills. Okay, he's like 38 years old or something like that. He's an old dude. But he is built like a brick shithouse. So is Miles Johnson. But I don't think Miles Johnson has faced another guy that's built like a brick shithouse like Douglas Silva de Andrade. And de Andrade, I think, is a much more technical striker. I think he should be able to force scrambles in the grappling. I just don't know that Johns is going to be able to have his way with a guy like Douglas Silva de Andrade. So I'm going to go with the Brazilian here. Keep it on the feet. Be more technical. I think he's durable enough too. Like Johns hits like a freight train, but he doesn't really follow it up with anything. He'll hit you with like a big right or a big left hook, but he doesn't follow it up with anything. So even if you take a big shot from Miles Johns, you're still in there. He's not going to pour it on you. You know what I'm saying? And in the takedown department, he doesn't really do a ton of ground and pound. It's a lot of cage control time, kind of like just takedown after takedown, just stringing stuff together. I think Douglas's cardio is good enough to outlast Miles Johns in those scenarios as well. And we know Johns has some questionable cardio. So I'm going to go with Silva de Andrade for the pick. And we move on. Timmy Cuamba, Lucas Almeida. Interesting matchup here because Timmy Cuamba lost on the Contender Series, but I thought he probably should have won against Mateo Vogel or something like that. He got robbed on the Contender Series and then takes a short notice fight, I think like 7 days after his last fight, or maybe it was 2 weeks. I think it was like 7 days against Belagioki, up a weight class. I was big on Belagioki that fight, and Belagioki won that fight pretty clearly. But Timmy Cuamba's not a bad striker. Just at times, he's a bit gun shy. Like, he's got really, really technical strikes on the feet. He's not that dangerous, but I think that's because he's kind of gun shy at times. When he's fighting these guys on the regionals, he looks a lot more confident and he goes for it a little bit more. But once he's on the Contender Series, once he's in the UFC, doesn't quite go for it as much. In this fight, I think he needs to go for it, or at least mix up his game against Lucas Almeida, because Almeida's a big, tall striker who loves to use his kicks, has a pretty good left hook, and good hands overall. So I don't really see either guy looking for grappling here. Maybe Cuamba can mix that in. I think that would be a smart move on his half because Lucas Almeida doesn't have a good ground game. He has a really, really deep submission package, but once we hit the UFC level, submissions off your back don't work as much. So I don't know exactly how good that submission game is because a lot of it is like triangles, arm bars, guillotines, shit that's defensive. So I don't think Almeida's going to be shooting takedowns in this one. If Cuamba does, I would give that a good thing to have in his back pocket. But if this fight's on the feet, I think Almeida's probably a longer, more powerful striker. And I think that's right in his wheelhouse. You look at his losses in the UFC, Pat Sabatini, insane grappler, a guy that just wants to get you to the ground and smother you, and he beat him that way. And then he fights Andre Fili. Andre Fili's good. Like, Andre Fili is top 20 in the featherweight division, I believe. I think this is a step down. You're getting a guy that doesn't have a UFC win. Maybe, we don't really know. Maybe he's not even UFC level. He's young. He's still getting better, and Timmy Cuamba is still getting better. But I'm going to go with Lucas Almeida for a pick here. We'll see, though. Stay tuned to the official picks video later in the week. Co-main event, Ikram Aliskerov, Antonio Trocoli. We don't really need to go over this one, man. I mean, the pick is obviously Ikram Aliskerov. He's just picking up a fight here, I don't know, maybe just to stay active because guys are just pulling out against him. And Trocoli is not good. He's not good at all. The only thing he's good at is getting you to the ground and finding a submission. He's going to hunt him, but we're talking a guy that's from Dagestan, no mustache, with a beard. I don't see him getting submitted. Now, Trocoli was going to fight at 205 on short notice against that Umar Sy guy. He pulled out of that fight, I think maybe because they wanted to make this fight or some reason. I don't know. I don't know why he pulled out, but he hasn't really been active for a long time. He hasn't really had very good wins, even if he's been active over the past 6 years. Like, his wins are not good. They're against bad guys. So, Trocoli is also Mackenzie Dern's boyfriend. And if you've watched Mackenzie Dern striking over her past 2 or 3 fights, it's not good. Trocoli's striking is not good either. So I'd probably take Ikram Aliskerov inside the distance, probably by knockout. And yeah, I think Ikram absolutely smokes this guy, probably in round 1 as well. Main event, it's a tough one because you're getting a guy in Taira who's so young, so green, but he looks like an absolute stud. Alex Perez, a lot of experience, fought for a title. And then he had that period of inactivity. He took a bunch of losses in a row, pulled out a bunch of fights. Then he had a fight with Makayev earlier this year, and he didn't look bad. He nearly beat Makayev. And then gets a main event against Mateusz Nicolau and knocks him out in round 2, I believe. And he looked good in that fight. I mean, he's got some heavy hands. He's got heavy leg kicks. and he's got really good takedown defense. The problem is he usually likes to mix in his own offensive wrestling. And if he does that, if he gets into a grappling match with Taira, I think Taira submits him. But on the feet, I think Perez could probably touch him up on the feet. But I also might be underrating Tatsuro Taira's stand-up game because I think Taira, he knows his strengths. He knows his strengths are in the jiu-jitsu department. He's not really striking with guys, but he is coming off a knockout win. So, if this is a stand-up affair, I'm probably going to side with the experience with Alex Perez. But I think Tatsuro Taira, being how young and athletic he is, I think he should be able to find his way to the ground with Alex Perez, whether he's, throw him up against the cage, try to look for his back, or on the feet. I don't think he's going to be a fish out of water. So I'm going to go with Tatsuro Taira for a quick pick early in the week. Once again, early pick Tatsuro Taira. I think the guy's the truth. He's undefeated. He's looked really good in all of his fights, dominating all of his fights when he's not finishing them and finishing most of his opponents. So I'll take Tatsuro Taira. The guy looks really freaking weird for a guy. Like, the guy's body, he looks like a doll. Like, you look at this guy, he looks like a doll. And I don't know if it's just because he's from Japan or what. Like, this guy needs like some tattoos or something. I know that's not part of the culture there, but he needs some tattoos. He needs to look a little bit meaner. If he looked a little bit meaner, maybe I'd have more confidence in taking this guy. He's super young, super green. But I do think there's a world where he goes in there and submits Alex Perez. So I'll take him for a pick. Those are the early picks. Once again, stay tuned to the Hey Jai Picks YouTube channel for the official picks later in the week and the best bets video later in the week on Friday. And of course, stay tuned for the full card in-depth breakdown on the Double Leg YouTube channel. I do that with my boy, The Parlay. That goes out Tuesday, so keep an eye out for that. Until next time, if you enjoyed, like and subscribe. Hey Jai Picks.